Hello everyone, I wish you peace and happiness. Are you all healthy? Today, I will continue to tell you about the difficult, impoverished and challenging days of Huyen and her mother trying to make a living. To hug the bouquet of flowers he just picked, the flowers still fresh and fragrant. He looked at the bouquet and couldn't help but smile when thinking of Huyen. An image of her happily receiving the flowers appeared in his mind, making his smile even gentler and warmer. Hello everyone, I wish you peace and happiness. Are you all healthy? Today, I will continue to tell you about the difficult, impoverished and challenging days of Huyen and her mother trying to make a living. To hug the bouquet of flowers he just picked, the flowers still fresh and fragrant. He looked at the bouquet and couldn't help but smile when thinking of Huyen. An image of her happily receiving the flowers appeared in his mind, making his smile even gentler and warmer. Seeing my mother sitting and pulling out medicinal plants for quite a while, Micah was worried that she might be tired, so she quickly ran inside the house. She poured a glass of water, carefully carried it outside with both hands, then handed it to her mother and said, "Mom, drink some water. Rest for a bit to feel less tired." Huyen smiled gently, graciously took the glass of water from her daughter and Appo's hands and took a sip. She reached out to stroke Micah and Appo's hair and softly said, "Thank you, my daughter." Hearing this, Micah happily sat down beside her mother. Huyen gathered the medicinal herbs she had just dug up into a neat pile in the corner of the garden. She bent down carefully, holding a large bundle, and carried it to the front of the ditch, where the warm morning sunlight greeted her. Arriving at the bamboo shower house that Da had built for the two of them the day before, Huyen gently placed each herb on the bamboo slats, arranging them neatly to dry. The sunlight shone down, and the medicinal herbs gradually dried in the gentle breeze. Huyen looked at her work and smiled softly, continuing to arrange each bundle of herbs neatly. After drying the medicinal herbs, Huyen returned to the freshly dug land. She held a hoe, slowly weeding and turning over the soil in layers. The steady strikes of the hoe made the soil more friable, and the weeds were gathered to one side. Huyen carefully leveled the ground to make it flat, preparing for planting new herbs later. Under the morning sunlight, she worked diligently, while Micah sat nearby obediently playing and watching her mother. When finished, Huyen bent down to gather the weeds she had just pulled into a large bundle. She tied it tightly with both hands and gently lifted it up, carrying it away from the garden to dispose of it. The small path in front of the house was filled with the morning sunlight. Huyen walked slowly, carrying the bundle of weeds in her hand, and then placed it in the collection area. Afterwards, she brushed her hands lightly. After cleaning up, Huyen took Micah by the hand and led her to the small ditch in front of the house. The mother and daughter sat by the water and Appo's edge, and Huyen gently washed the mud off Micah and Appo's hands and feet, then washed her own hands and feet. The clear, cool water flowed softly under the morning sunlight. Once finished, Huyen held Micah and Appo's small hand, and the mother and daughter slowly walked back into the small house. Huyen put on her coat and carefully put a hat on Micah, then bent down to pet Pippi a few times. She stood up, closed the small house door, and looked up at the sky. The dark clouds were gradually approaching. Huyen softly said, "It looks like it and Appo's going to rain soon. Let and Appo's take advantage of the early departure." Huyen tightly held Micah and Appo's small hand and they left the house together. Mother and daughter quickly walked along the village road. Behind them was the small house and Uncle Pippi still standing and watching. The sky was increasingly clouded, signaling an approaching rain. As soon as they reached the hilltop, Micah had fallen asleep in her mother and Appo's arms. Huyen, carrying her child, was walking slowly along the small path when the first drops of rain began to fall. The rain quickly intensified and Huyen hurriedly covered Micah and Appo's face with her hat, trying not to wake her with the raindrops. Seeing a small hut ahead, Huyen quickly carried Micah and ran towards it. She held her child tightly in her arms, shielding Micah from the rain, and quickly stepped inside the hut. Once inside the shelter, Huyen let out a relieved sigh, still holding Micah and gently gazing at her sleeping peacefully. Inside the hut, Huyen placed the basket down and took out a piece of cloth she brought, carefully spreading it on the ground. She lightly brushed her sleeves, then used her sleeve to wipe the wet spots on the cloth so Micah would have a dry place to lie. Huyen gently laid Micah on the cloth, pulled the edges up to wrap around the child. She sat close by, using her hand to shield Micah, quietly watching over her amidst the heavy rain falling outside the hut. Huyen sat beside Micah, looking outside and seeing that the sky was still heavily raining. Thinking about the upcoming market, she decided to let Micah sleep in the small hut to temporarily avoid the rain. Huyen stepped outside. The landowner, who cared for the mother and daughter, allowed Huyen to go into the garden to pick bananas to sell. Huyen put on her hat and followed the banana bushes on the hillside. After searching for a while, Huyen saw a bunch of ripe bananas mixed with green and yellow ones appear before her eyes. She approached, used all her strength to pull the bunch down low, then carefully cut it from the tree with a knife. The heavy bunch was placed on the ground by Huyen. Seeing a few ripe, fragrant and sweet bananas, she broke one off to eat briefly to regain her strength. As she ate, she looked at the remaining bananas, thinking about taking them to the market to sell and earn extra money. Huyen used one hand to carry the freshly cut banana bunch, while the other hand held a bamboo basket containing her belongings. Although the banana bunch was quite heavy, she still tried to walk step by step along the wet dirt road in the rain. After a while, Huyen quickly brought the bananas back to the gathering spot near the hut where Micah was sleeping. She placed the banana bunch and the bamboo basket on the ground, then looked towards the hut, hoping her daughter was still sleeping peacefully and not cold. Huyen walked a little further and found another banana bunch growing quite high on the tree. She grabbed the banana leaves and pulled them down, then tried to climb up step by step to reach the banana bunch. Using all her strength, Huyen pulled the bunch down low, then took a knife to cut away the surrounding leaves and detach the bunch from the tree. She placed the banana bunch on the ground, squatted down, and used the knife to carefully separate each bunch of green bananas into smaller sections. The ripe bananas were yellow, still beautiful and intact. She carefully picked them out and placed them into a basket. Any fruit that was bruised, damaged, or rotten, Huyen left behind, not taking them to sell. She meticulously selected each bunch of bananas, hoping to gather as many good ones as possible to bring to the market. Huyen walked a little further and came across a still quite beautiful green banana bunch. She carefully grasped the stem and leaf stalk, lowered the banana bunch, and then cut it off the tree with a knife. After placing the banana bunch on the ground, Huyen gathered the previously cut bunches into one spot. She carried each bunch and took everything to the collection point. Hearing Micah and Appo's crying from inside the hut, Huyen hurriedly ran over. She picked up her daughter and took her to the gathering spot, holding Micah tightly in her arms and gently soothing her. Seeing that her child was hungry, Huyen peeled a ripe banana and offered it to Micah to eat. Micah ate while sniffling but soon finished the banana. Seeing that her child was still hungry because she hadn't Appo's eaten anything since morning, Huyen peeled a second banana, then a third and gave them to Micah. The girl ate happily from one fruit to another. As she held her child and watched Micah eat, Huyen felt immense love for her daughter and only wished for her to be full. Huyen gathered the selected banana bunches and gently packed them into a bamboo basket. She carefully arranged each bunch to prevent bruising, then tied dry banana fibers tightly around the mouth of the basket. Huyen pulled the string firmly, securing it to the basket and Appo's rim so that the bananas wouldn't Appo's fall out when she carried it to the market. Once everything was in place, she lifted the basket to check its stability, and satisfied that everything was secure, she prepared to take it away. Huyen carried a bamboo basket full of bananas on her shoulder, carefully adjusted the strap to secure it, then bent down to pick up Micah. She held her daughter close to her chest, looking at her with love as they walked. Mother and daughter slowly left the hilltop, following the dirt path down to the market. Although the banana basket was quite heavy and the road was still wet after the rain, Huyen tried to walk quickly to catch the market opening, bringing the freshly picked bananas to sell. In the small garden beside the little house, De held a hoe in his hand and stepped out to weed the garden. He bent down, using the hoe to loosen the soil and pull out the weeds growing among the corn rows. The rhythmic strikes of the hoe echoed through the peaceful space. De worked diligently, cleaning up the garden around the house. Huyen took Micah to the market. Finding a vacant spot, she gently placed the bamboo basket full of bananas on the ground and spread out a mat to display her goods. Huyen opened the basket, carefully took out each bunch of bananas, and arranged them neatly on the mat. Then she took a small knife and cut the banana bunches into manageable portions, lining them up in rows for customers to see and choose easily. Micah sat beside her mother, obediently watching the banana bunches displayed in front of her. A male customer walking by saw the banana bunches neatly displayed on the mat, then stopped to ask to buy. Huyen happily picked a ripe banana and offered it to the customer to taste. After eating, the customer nodded in approval and said, and quote, "These bananas are very sweet, I and Appos, I'll take the whole bunch." End quote. Huyen politely replied, end quote, "Yes sir, you can take this bunch to ripen and eat gradually." End quote. The customer paid Huyen and then carefully carried the banana bunch away from the market. Huyen received the money, carefully stored it in her bag, feeling happy because her first sale was a complete sellout of a bunch of bananas. The next customers took turns visiting, and Huyen and Appos' bunches of bananas were quickly sold out. When the basket was empty, Huyen happily tidied up, gathered the banana leaves, and neatly placed them into her bamboo basket. Just as she was about to carry Micah home, the sky suddenly darkened and heavy rain poured down. Unable to get home in time, Huyen had no choice but to hold Micah and stand under a nearby shelter to avoid the rain. She covered her child with her hand and pulled Micah close to her chest. Outside, the rain grew heavier, the market street gradually emptied, but the mother and daughter silently waited for the rain to stop. After weeding, De gathered the bunches of grass and carried them outside to throw away. When he returned to the house, he suddenly felt dizzy and had to hold onto the iron stake beside the house before slowly sitting down on a chair to rest. De sat quietly for a while, his eyes directed toward the cornfield. Thinking of Huyen and Micah, he suddenly had the idea of taking a day off from work to pick some corn and bring it to the two of them. With that thought, De stood up and went to the cornfield. He chose the corn stalks with ears and one by one plucked the ears down. De sat down, peeled off the layers of corn husks to check. But when he removed all the husks, he was stunned to realize that the ears seemed to have no kernels. The kernels were sparse and many spots were completely empty. De held the corn ear in his hand, looked at it for a long time, then sighed softly. De stepped into the nearby cornfield to check. He peeled off each layer of leaves from a corn cob, but inside many cobs were just bare cores, with the kernels almost completely eaten by mice. De continued to move to another bush, carefully inspecting each cob. The more he checked, the more he felt heartbroken when he realized that almost the entire cornfield had been ravaged by mice, with very few kernels left on the cobs. Not giving up, De patiently peeled each cob to find the ones with remaining kernels. He broke off the cobs with few kernels, collected them very carefully, and stuffed them into his shirt pocket. As he worked, De thought of Huyen and Micah, hoping to bring some remaining corn to the two mothers and children. The rain gradually eased, leaving only light drizzles falling softly. Seeing that the sky had calmed, Huyen picked up Micah in her arms, holding her close to her chest, then checked the woven basket again. Mother and daughter hurriedly left the market area, walking slowly along the still wet road. Micah snuggled into her mother and Appos' shoulder while Huyen carried her and quickly headed back home. De gathered the remaining corn cobs and brought them inside. Carefully, he packed each cob into a plastic bag and set it aside. Then De went inside, sat down to rest on the wooden bench. Suddenly remembering the pair of slippers he bought for Huyen, De stood up, walked to the corner of the window, took out the slippers and brought them back to the bench. He sat down, gently holding the slippers in his hands, with a look in his eyes as if recalling Huyen happily receiving the gift. Thinking of her, De couldn't and oppose. T helped but smile, feeling warm inside and eager to bring the slippers to Huyen soon. De stood up, carefully closed the small house door, then took the motorcycle out of the gate. Before leaving, he looked back at the bag of popcorn and the pair of slippers he had prepared to bring to Huyen. De checked once more to make sure everything was securely tied on the bike before smiling. He got on the bike, ready to ride to Huyen and Appo's house, eager to see the mother and daughter. After a long journey, Huyen finally led Micah back to the small house. As she stepped into the yard, she sat down beside Pippi, gently stroking the dog and Appo's fur and asked affectionately, "Is Pippi good at home?" Pippi wagged its tail happily, nuzzling her hand as if welcoming the mother and daughter back. Huyen smiled, stood up, went inside to pour a bowl of water, and then brought it out to place in front of Pippi. She sat down to watch Pippi drink, while Micah also sat nearby, happily petting the dog after a long morning. Huyen entered the small kitchen, took some dry wood and placed it in the stove, then lit a fire. The flames quickly ignited, spreading warmth throughout the kitchen. She placed the kettle on the stove, adjusted its position to be secure, and sat down beside it, waiting for the water to boil. Micah was playing on the bamboo bed. While riding a motorbike along the village road, De suddenly saw a very beautiful flower bush by the roadside. He stopped the bike, got off, and approached to admire the blooming flowers. De carefully picked many different types of flowers with various colors, gathering them into a large bouquet. Then he used his hands to adjust each stem, tying them neatly into a beautiful bouquet. De lifted the bouquet to look at it, imagining the moment he would give it to Huyen. Thinking of her smile when receiving the bouquet, he couldn't and oppose. T helped but smile, his eyes full of happiness. De hugged the bouquet of flowers onto the motorcycle and continued heading towards Huyen and Appo's house. After a while, the small house of the mother and daughter gradually appeared before his eyes. De eased off the throttle and stopped the bike by the roadside, gazing at the house, then looking down at the colorful bouquet in his arms. He smiled softly but hesitated slightly, as if wondering whether Huyen would be happy to receive this bouquet. De sat still for a moment, then gently placed the bouquet down, twisted the throttle, and continued riding towards the house. His heart was both excited and eager to meet Huyen. Huyen added a few dry sticks to the stove, and when she saw the flames burning steadily, she stood up. She turned to Micah and said, "Let and Appo's go to the garden to pick vegetables with Mom." Saying that, Huyen took a bamboo basket and led Micah to the front yard. When they arrived, Huyen sat down beside the vegetable bed, gently picking tender greens and placing them into the basket. Micah also sat next to her mother, diligently helping her pick vegetables, her small hands working very obediently. The mother and daughter picked vegetables while chatting happily, and the small garden was filled with a warm and peaceful atmosphere. De and Appo's motorcycle stopped in front of Huyen and Appo's house gate. He carefully parked his bike, then took the bouquet of flowers in his hand, admiring the colorful blossoms and involuntarily smiling. De took the bag of corn and the pair of slippers he had prepared, along with the bouquet of flowers, and entered Huyen and Appo's house. Passing by the green trees along the street, De saw Pippi resting under the shade of a tree. He approached, sat down gently, stroked Pippi and said, "Good girl, Pippi." Pippi wagged her tail happily. De smiled, bent down, picked up Pippi and hugged the dog in his arms, carrying the bag of corn, slippers and bouquet of flowers into Huyen and Appo's yard. When I came to the porch, I saw Huyen and Micah sitting outside in the garden, picking vegetables. I stood by the porch, quietly watching Huyen and then looking at the bouquet in my hand. I hesitated for a moment, finally deciding to go around to the back of the house, hide the bouquet and my slippers by hanging them on a tree branch, planning to give the bouquet to Huyen later. I carried a bag of corn and entered the yard, heading toward the mother and daughter. Seeing me arrive, Huyen put down the vegetables she was picking and stood up to come closer. She smiled and asked, "Are you here to visit?" I also smiled, nodded gently, and looked at the mother and daughter, feeling happy because I finally got to see Huyen and Micah. I gently lifted the bag of corn and said to Huyen, and quote, "I just harvested some corn from the garden. The mice have eaten most of it, leaving only this part, and there are fewer kernels. Keep this for Micah to eat." End quote. Huyen happily took the bag of corn from Apo's hand, looked at the ears of corn and smiled, end quote. "Lucky me, I haven't and Apo's bought anything to eat after coming back from the market today. I and Apo's boil the corn and we can eat together." End quote. Then Huyen carried the bag of corn into the kitchen to prepare. I sat down beside Micah, watching Huyen busy in the kitchen with affectionate eyes, a warm smile playing on his lips. Huyen washed the corn cobs thoroughly and neatly arranged them in the pot. She poured in more water, placed the pot on the stove, and lit the fire. Next to her, I sat down, took the bunch of water spinach Huyen had just picked, and gently rinsed each bunch under the water basin. Huyen bent down to add a few more sticks of firewood to the stove. I sat quietly beside her, watching her intently. Feeling his gaze, Huyen felt a bit shy, thinking that perhaps her face was covered with soot. She reached up and lightly wiped her cheek, then turned to look at Da. Their eyes met. Huyen smiled softly, and Da also smiled gently. No one said anything, only the crackling of the fire and the warm atmosphere filling the small kitchen. Da stood up, quietly went to the back of the house to get a bouquet of flowers and a pair of slippers that had been placed on a tree branch. He held the bouquet in his hand, stood thinking for a moment, then smiled, deciding to give it to Huyen. As he approached the porch, Da saw Huyen coming out from the kitchen. He quickly hid the bouquet behind his back, pretending nothing was wrong. Huyen walked towards Micah, who was sitting and playing outside in the garden, while Da stood behind, nervously waiting. When Huyen turned back, Da stepped forward, presenting the colorful bouquet in front of her and shyly said, end quote, "I give this to you," end quote. Huyen was a bit surprised, her eyes wide open as she looked at the bouquet in Apo's hand. She happily took it, gently lifted the bouquet to admire it, a happy smile blooming on her lips. Seeing that smile, Da also couldn't and Apo's help but smile back. Holding the bouquet in her arms, Huyen looked at the colorful flowers with a sudden surge of emotion. Tears silently rolled down her cheeks. Da saw this and immediately stepped closer, gently wiping away her tears. He softly brushed her messy hair, his eyes gentle and full of care. Huyen looked at Da through her tears, then gently smiled. She tightly embraced the bouquet, feeling the sincerity and warmth he had for her. Da held up a pair of slippers in front of Huyen and gently said, end quote, "I bought these slippers for you. Sit down and try them on." End quote. Then Da kindly pulled Huyen to sit on the bamboo chair beside her. He took the slippers out of the plastic bag, carefully placed them down, and gently put each one on Huyen and Apo's feet. Huyen looked down at the new slippers, her eyes gradually welling up with tears. Tears unconsciously rolled down her face. Huyen choked and said, end quote, "No one has ever given me a gift in my life. No one has ever treated me so well," end quote. Da looked up at Huyen, his eyes full of compassion. He gently wiped away the tears still on her cheeks, then took her hand softly. Da looked straight into her eyes and slowly said, end quote, "I want to be with you, to take care of you and our child. I can and Apo's promise to give you a wealthy life, but I will do my best so that you and our child one and Apo's have to suffer alone anymore," end quote. Huyen was silent, her hand still in Da and Apo's. Tears fell again, but this time her face bore a smile. She felt his sincerity and gently squeezed Da and Apo's hand. Micah, sitting beside, suddenly looked up at the sky and said, Uncle Da, it and Apo's raining, let and Apo's go inside. Hearing Micah, Huyen and Da gently looked at each other and then let go of their hands. Da stood up, walked over to Micah, bent down and carried the girl into the house. Huyen still sat on the bamboo chair, glancing at her new slippers on her feet, and then at the colorful bouquet of flowers she was holding in her arms. She softly smiled, her heart filled with joy. After a while, Huyen stood up, carefully brought the bouquet into the house, and placed it neatly on the bamboo table. She looked at the bouquet for a moment longer, a smile still on her lips as the rain began to fall outside. The corn is cooked. Da picks out each ear of corn, arranging them neatly on a plate and placing it on the bamboo table. The three of them sit together around the small table. Outside, the rain drips softly. Da breaks each ear of corn into bite-sized pieces, skewers a piece with chopsticks and hands it to Micah. He then takes another piece and offers it to Huyen, gently saying, Eat, both of you, Micah happily eats the corn, enjoying it, and Huyen also smiles as she accepts it. Da sits beside them, enjoying the simple corn with the mother and daughter. The sound of rain outside the porch blends with their conversation and laughter, making the small house feel warmer amidst the rainy afternoon. Da sat beside the bamboo table, quietly watching Huyen intently. Seeing that he wasn't Apo's eating, Huyen gently said, Eat, please, Da softly smiled, his eyes still tenderly looking at her, Just watching you eat makes me feel full, After saying that, Da reached out and took Huyen and Apo's hand. Outside, the rain was still falling steadily, but inside the small house there was warmth. Da looked at Huyen sincerely and said, I want to take care of your mother and you. I only hope that from now on, you and your mother will always be safe and no longer have to suffer alone. Huyen was silent, her hand gently squeezing Da and Apo's. She smiled through her tears. Micah, sitting beside them, was still happily eating corn, occasionally glancing at the two and smiling. The three continued to gather together, outside the rain still falling, closing a simple day full of love. If everyone loves Huyen and Micah and Apo's mother and daughter, please subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications, and leave a word of encouragement for the two of them to see the next developments. Every follow and every loving comment from everyone will be a source of comfort and strength to help Huyen get through difficult times. Thank you all very much.